She pretended to be insane to get inside. Nellie Bly, Blackwell's Island Asylum, New York, October 1887. The assignment nobody else would take. September 1887, New York City. A 23-year-old woman walks into the offices of the New York World newspaper. She has no money. She has been rejected by every editor in the city. She has spent 4 months sleeping in cheap rooms, living on almost nothing, trying to convince men who ran newspapers that a woman could do the same job they did and do it better. Today, she has an offer for the editor, not a request, an offer. She will have herself committed to the most notorious insane asylum in New York. She will go inside, she will document everything, and she will come back out, if they can get her out, with a story that will change everything. The editor looked at her. Then he said, "How will they get you out?" She said, "First, get me in." Her name was Nellie Bly, and what she found inside that asylum was worse than anything she had imagined, because the worst thing she found wasn't the violence, or the cold, or the rotten food, or the nurses who beat patients for sport. The worst thing she found was the women who weren't insane at all. You're watching Dusky Archives, where history's darkest secrets don't stay buried. If this story is already keeping you still, subscribe. We go deeper every single week. The woman who made herself a name. She was born Elizabeth Jane Cochran in 1864 in a small town called Cochran's Mills, Pennsylvania. Her father died when she was 6. Her mother remarried a violent man. By the time Elizabeth was a teenager, she already understood what it meant to be a woman in a world designed to keep women powerless and quiet. In 1885, a Pittsburgh newspaper called The Dispatch published an editorial. The title was "What Girls Are Good For." The argument was simple. Women belonged at home. A working woman was, the editorial's exact words, a monstrosity. Elizabeth Cochran wrote a letter to the editor so furious, so precise, so well argued that the editor published an advertisement asking the anonymous author to come forward. She did. He hired her on the spot. She needed a pen name. She chose one from a Stephen Foster song, Nellie Bly. For the next 2 years, she wrote about working women, poverty, factory conditions, stories nobody else was covering. But Pittsburgh was too small for her. In 1887, she moved to New York, the biggest newspaper city in the world. And for 4 months, every editor she walked into told her the same thing. We don't hire women for real reporting. She was running out of money and running out of patience. And then she walked into the offices of Joseph Pulitzer's New York World, and she did not ask for a job. She proposed a story so dangerous, so unprecedented, that the editor could not say no. She would go into the women's lunatic asylum on Blackwell's Island, undercover, alone, with no guarantee of getting out. How do you make yourself seem insane? Blackwell's Island sat in the middle of the East River between Manhattan and Queens. To get there, you took a boat. And once you were on that island, once those gates closed behind you, the only way off was if someone on the outside decided you were sane enough to leave. Originally built to hold 1,000 patients, Blackwell's was cramming more than 1,600 people into the asylum when Bly arrived in the fall of 1887. Extensive budget cuts had left just 16 doctors on staff. The rumors about what happened inside had been circulating for years. Nobody had ever gotten inside to verify them. The editor gave Nellie 3 instructions: use the alias Nellie Brown, report honestly, and stop smiling. Smiling might give her away. She checked into a boarding house called the Temporary Females on 2nd Avenue, and then she began her performance. She wandered the halls and nearby streets, refused to sleep, ranted and yelled incoherently, and even practiced looking crazed in her mirror. She told other residents that she thought they were all mad. She stared at walls. She said she couldn't remember where she had come from. Within days, the boarding house owner called the police. She checked into a rooming house, concocted a story about having lost her luggage and money, was turned over to the police, and quickly declared insane by a judge. The whole process, from conception to forcible commitment, took only 4 days. No one examined her carefully. No one asked her difficult questions. A judge looked at a 23-year-old woman who was acting strangely and did not ask what was making her act that way. He simply sent her to Bellevue Hospital. And Bellevue confirmed the diagnosis. And Bellevue sent her by boat across the East River to Blackwell's Island. The gates opened. She walked through. They closed behind her. The insane asylum on Blackwell's Island is a human rat trap. It is easy to get in, but once there, it is impossible to get out. Nellie Bly, 10 Days in a Madhouse, 1887. What she found inside. The moment she crossed onto Blackwell's Island, Nellie Bly stopped pretending. She talked normally. She answered questions clearly. She told nurses she was not insane and asked to be discharged. She behaved in every observable way like a completely rational, articulate human being. It made no difference. The hospital staff seemed unaware that she was no longer insane and instead began to report her ordinary actions as symptoms of her illness. Even her pleas to be released were interpreted as further signs of mental illness. She had discovered the asylum's deepest logic. Once you were inside, everything you did confirmed that you should be inside. Cry, and you were unstable. Laugh, and you were manic. Argue, and you were aggressive. Stay quiet, and you were withdrawn. There was no behavior that would convince the staff you were well. The diagnosis came first. The evidence was arranged around it afterward. And then she started paying attention to the other women. She spoke with women who were committed because of penurious circumstances or physical exhaustion from strenuous labor. Many were immigrants who did not speak English, caught in a foreign legal system and unable to communicate. One woman had even been committed by her vindictive husband. These were not mentally ill women. These were poor women, foreign women, women whose husbands had wanted them gone, women who had no one to speak for them and ended up in the one place where no one would listen to them even if they screamed. And what was being done to them was methodical, cold, and entirely legal. The cold, the hunger, the baths. The food was rotten. The meals consisted of gruel broth, spoiled beef, bread that was little more than dried dough, and dirty, undrinkable water. Patients who refused to eat it went hungry. There was no alternative. The cold was constant. The patients were made to sit for much of each day on hard benches with scant protection from the cold. In October, the building was unheated. Women sat in thin cotton gowns on wooden benches for hours, not allowed to move, not allowed to speak above a whisper, not allowed to do anything that might disturb the order of the ward. And then there were the baths. The bath water was frigid, and buckets of it were poured over patients' heads. The bath water was rarely changed, with many patients bathing in the same filthy water. Even when the water was eventually changed, the staff did not scrub or clean out the bath. The next patient was simply thrown into a stained, dirty tub. Patients also shared bath towels, with healthy patients forced to dry themselves with a towel previously used by patients with skin inflammations, boils, or open sores. Nellie described the bathing ritual from memory afterward. Ice-cold water poured over her head, 3 buckets in succession, into her eyes, her ears, her nose, her mouth, her teeth chattering so hard she could not speak. And when it was over, wet clothes,
no heating, back to the bench. This was not treatment. This was punishment dressed as medicine. And the nurses who administered it were not cruel out of madness. They were cruel because they could be. Because the women they were treating had no voice, no rights, and no way out. The dangerous patients were tied together with ropes. The ones who screamed were beaten. The ones who begged were ignored. And the ones who had arrived sane, the immigrants, the poor, the abandoned. To her horror, Bly quickly realized that while many of these inmates were not suffering from mental illnesses before they arrived, their treatments inflicted grave psychological damage on them. She had been right to worry about getting out. If this story is keeping you awake, you're exactly where you belong. Dusky Archives exists for the
history tried to bury. Hit subscribe. Every week, we pull something else out of the dark. The moment her cover nearly broke. On the third day, a group of reporters from rival newspapers came to the island to see the mysterious woman who had been committed, Nellie Bly, the strange amnesiac nobody could identify. Her own colleagues, people who had seen her face in the press room. She sat very still. She looked at the floor. She answered their questions in vague, disconnected sentences. Not one of them recognized her. This was perhaps the most revealing moment of her entire time on the island. Here were professional observers, people whose job was to notice things, standing in front of a woman they had worked alongside, and they could not see her, because they had already been told what she was. She was a patient. She was insane. The label had replaced the person. She stayed 10 days in total. 10 days of ice baths, rotten food, wooden benches, and women crying in the dark. 10 days of watching nurses beat patients who made too much noise and doctors who barely glanced at the people in their care. From the moment I entered the insane ward on the island, I made no attempt to keep up the assumed role of insanity. I talked and acted just as I do in normal life. Yet, strange to say, the more sanely I talked and acted, the crazier I was thought to be by all except one physician, whose kindness and gentle ways I shall not soon forget. One doctor. Out of everyone on that island, one person who looked at her and saw a person. After 10 days, the New York World sent a lawyer to arrange her release. She walked out of the gates of Blackwell's island and into the cold October air and wrote down everything she remembered before she forgot a single detail. Behind Asylum bars, the story that changed everything. October 9th, 1887. The New York World published the first installment of Nellie Bly's account. The headline, "Behind Asylum Bars." The reaction was immediate and enormous. The story was picked up by newspapers across the country, readers who had never thought about what happened inside an asylum, who had perhaps preferred not to think about it, were confronted with every detail. The food, the cold, the baths, the beatings, the women who were not insane and had no way to prove it. Not only did the New York City municipal government appropriate more money to the care of the mentally ill on Blackwell's Island, a grand jury was impaneled to investigate the abuses and poor treatments Bly uncovered at the asylum. Approximately 1 month after her articles ran in print, many of the most glaring problems she reported had improved. Better living and sanitary conditions were instituted, more nourishing meals were provided. The jury's report resulted in an $850,000 increase in the budget of the Department of Public Charities and Corrections. The grand jury also ensured that future examinations were more thorough, such that only the seriously ill were committed to the asylum. The psychiatrists who committed her, the ones who had certified a perfectly healthy 23-year-old woman as dangerously insane, offered profuse apologies. They explained how she had managed to deceive so many professionals. One of them admitted that during her examination at Bellevue, the main physician had been more interested in the attractive nurse assisting him than in the patient he was supposed to be evaluating. He had not looked at her carefully enough. He had seen what he expected to see. And that failure of attention sent a sane woman to an island asylum and gave her the story that made her famous. She published the full account as a book, 10 Days in a Madhouse. It sold in enormous numbers. 7 years after it was published, Blackwell's Island Asylum closed entirely. What happened to the women she left behind? Nellie Bly walked out of Blackwell's Island after 10 days. She got her story. She got her career. She became the most famous journalist in America. The women she left behind did not walk out. The immigrants who could not speak English, they stayed. The woman committed by her vindictive husband, she stayed. The women who had arrived healthy and were being made sick by what was being done to them, they stayed. Nellie mentioned them in her articles. The grand jury took note, but the improvements that followed were improvements to the institution. New food, better heating, more thorough examinations for new admissions. Nobody went back and reviewed the cases of the women already there. Nobody asked whether the women currently on the island had been correctly committed. They had been admitted under the old system. They remained. She wrote, "I left the insane ward with pleasure and regret. Pleasure that I was once more able to enjoy the free breath of heaven. Regret that I could not have brought with me some of the unfortunate women who lived and suffered with me, and who I am convinced are just as sane as I was and am now myself." She could not bring them with her. That is the sentence that haunts this story. She had seen what was being done to them. She had written about it in front of the entire country, and she still could not get them out. What she built from that island. After Blackwell's Island, Nellie Bly did not slow down. She went to Mexico undercover and exposed the brutality of the Porfirio Diaz dictatorship. She investigated baby trafficking in New York. She went undercover in a factory to expose the conditions facing women workers. She set up a lobbyist sting operation and caught politicians accepting bribes on camera. And in 1889, she did something nobody in the world had ever done. She attempted to travel around the globe in less than 80 days, beating the fictional record of Jules Verne's Phileas Fogg. Verne himself told her, "If you do it in 79 days, I shall applaud with both hands." She completed the trip in a record-breaking 72 days. When she stepped off the train in Jersey City, thousands cheered her. At 25, she was America's first celebrity journalist. But it was Blackwell's Island that made her. It was those 10 days, those particular 10 days of cold and hunger and women crying in the dark, that proved what she had always known, that a woman could do this, that a woman could go somewhere no one had gone, see something no one had seen, and come back and make the world change because of what she found. The public's fascination with Bly and her undercover exploits on Blackwell's Island quickly led to a surge of young female journalists performing investigative reporting. This new genre of girl stunt reporting married sensation journalism with vivid first-person narratives. Stunt reporters donned disguises and got the inside scoop on public institutions, opium dens, sweatshops, and abortion providers. She had not just changed the asylum, she had changed what journalism was allowed to be. She had walked through a door and left it open for every woman who came after her. The island is gone. The question isn't. Blackwell's Island Asylum closed in 1994. The island was eventually renamed Roosevelt Island. A monument honoring Nellie Bly is now located on the northern tip of Roosevelt Island, near the former site of the asylum where she conducted her investigation. It is called the Girl Puzzle, a name taken from the nickname newspapers had given her when she first arrived in Pittsburgh, young and angry and unwilling to be quiet. But here is the question that Nellie Bly's 10 days on that island actually asks, the question that doesn't close when the asylum does. How easy is it to be labeled something and then be unable to unlabel yourself? How many of those women on that island were there because someone with authority decided what they were, and from that moment forward, everything they did was filtered through that decision? Cry because you're frightened and you're proving you're unstable. Stay calm because you're trying to appear normal and you're proving you're withdrawn. There is no exit from a system that has already decided the answer. Nellie Bly got out because a newspaper lawyer came for her. The women she left behind had no lawyers, they had no newspapers, they had no one watching. She was 23 years old. She had 4 months of professional experience. She had no money and no connections, and she walked into a madhouse alone and came back out with the truth. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed again. This has been Dusky Archives. The cases history forgot, we remember them. If this story stayed with you, subscribe, because next week we open another door, and what's behind it is darker still.